Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of Three Drams. My name is Matt Healy, or Potstilled Matt, and I am happy to be bringing you episode 22, which means we've been a very long time joining us with Three Drams. And of course, I am super excited to be joined once again by three absolutely amazing guests. We are going to be going around the island of Ireland talking about some fantastic whiskies that are limited edition, yet to be released, and of course some really exciting new single malts as well. I am loving seeing so many familiar names in the comments section. One person who religiously watches this show, Tina in Germany, saying she's not in Germany this week, but she's in Greece and she's brought her samples with her. So I am delighted to see the dedication to the Three Drams cause there. We have Whiskey Nerd Matt in Dublin, and we also have Martin Purcell coming in from Dublin, John Murphy in Sandyford. We've got a number of people around the country. I know we have the lads in Glanmire. There's a big representation there, and why not? I also know we have friends in Bratislava Whiskey Club tuning in for this month's episode, and I am happy to say I am representing with Izzy's Pub in Bratislava this evening. So I'm very happy to welcome our friends from the Bratislava Whiskey Club this evening. Now, I do want to bring up one thing, because as always, I am your monthly host, Potstilled Matt, but I am not the mastermind or the man behind Three Drams. That is all the work of Irish Malts, which is the O'Donovan brothers and their team down in Cork. And I want to say one big thank you to them, not only for putting this on every month, getting all the brands together, getting all the samples all across the world, as far away as Brazil in the west and Japan in the east, but also, as Gavin says here, love the new packaging. Have we seen this absolutely phenomenal upgrade in the packaging here? A brilliant new pack from Three Drams. This fantastic new kit here. We have the Three Drams library here. This is where our little tasting card slots in as well. An absolutely phenomenal upgrade to this brilliant packaging. It even has a little outer shipper case for it as well. Everything brilliantly recyclable. I like to slide out my foam here. I think this is the only part you want to be looking at. And then you've got a fantastically either reusable or recyclable box for the end of every week. I'm going to take out my little bottles here as well, because these are going to be very important for this evening. We have three really exciting whiskeys to be trying. Two I've been trying for the first time this evening, and I love trying whiskeys for the first time on the show along with you guys, because you get to see my first impressions of these whiskeys. Now I'm going to line these up so I don't get them mixed up as we're going. But I think it is time that I am going to welcome some of our guests onto the show. I am seeing, though, that Mike D is in the comments saying it's the first time he's watching in live here in ages, and I'm delighted to see that, Mike, because as everyone knows, when you have the packs, or if you don't have the packs and just want to join in, you can watch us live on Facebook, on YouTube, or you can watch it back after the fact. We have a whole library on YouTube, so jump on, subscribe to the guys there, and be one of the many followers that watches this in the morning after, particularly our friends in the likes of Japan and Australia. I know Iana watches religiously in Japan the morning after, so feel free. If you can't join in live, you can still send us questions if you need to, and we can get the guys after the show to answer those questions. But enough of me talking, because that's not why you're here. I am delighted to be welcoming our first guest of the show, Mr. Robert Caldwell from Teeling Whiskey Company. So, Robert, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hi, Matt. What's going on?
Not much, Robert. How are you doing?
I'm well. It's good to be doing these again. We had a little, obviously there was a ton of them during lockdown, and then travel came back and everyone flooded to the airport. So it's nice to see a good balancing act between a little bit of these and a little bit of travel. I like it.
Absolutely. I think what's nice to see these keep going is because it still keeps the samples going into the house. You know, people get to try new and limited edition whiskeys with it before they jump. Yeah, exactly. Before either they jump into a whole bottle, or even sometimes when they miss out on certain bottlings that go past them without them seeing. So I see that's great. I'm loving the new setup. I know you're a lot nicer, brighter since the last time you joined us. I see a wee Icons of Whiskey award behind you there. So nice, proud presentation.
I'll cover it. So no, it's good. I mean, like, look, I always love these, as you know. You said you've got the Bratislava Whiskey Club here joining us. I mean, how often do you get to Bratislava? I know I've been once. I don't know, you've probably been once as well. But I mean, man, you'd love to go back. There's certainly some whiskey fans there, so it's great to have them and in our room, I guess, and share some whiskey with them. But yeah, I mean, upgraded setup, which is great. Got some Easter eggs behind me, plenty of whiskey. So yeah, I'm looking forward to every now and then jumping back online and doing a virtual tasting.
Exactly. I'm sure people are screenshotting your screen right now, zooming in, trying to see if there's any sneak peeks behind you. But I'm going to pull up the whiskey we are tasting this evening. So why don't you introduce it, and I'm going to pour my little sample in my glass here.
Yeah. So this is the Teeling Stiggins rum finish. So Stiggins is the name of the pineapple rum that's been released from the Plantation rum company. So Alexander Gabriel, man behind many brands, notably Plantation rum, Pierre Ferrand cognac, Citadel gin, very similar to Alex Chasko. In fact, they're friends, and Alex's family has worked at the Teeling distillery. But yeah, very like-minded souls in this discovery process, and almost like blurring the lines between traditional spirits categories. So we do a lot with Plantation. So this particular whiskey, and we'll flesh it out a little bit more, is a rum finish. Simply put, it's a rum finished Irish whiskey, but so is our flagship product, Teeling Small Batch. So if you can, and I definitely suggest doing this, trying these side by side and showcasing, because for all intents and purposes, these are the same whiskeys, just finished in different types of rum. And I would challenge anybody that the finished product remarkably different as we flesh out these different rums and their impact on a premium Irish whiskey. So this one, pineapple rum finished whiskey from Teeling.
So just before the question inevitably comes in the comment section, Teeling Small Batch is finished in what type of rum? And then obviously, can you give us a quick explainer as to what pineapple rum is, if it's not so self-explanatory?
I like how you said quick there, because I have a tendency to ramble. So Small Batch is Central American rum, so predominant flavors: rum raisin, vanilla, figs, apricots, dates, and a dark spice, cloves, pimento, even nutmeg and things like that. Makes a fantastic Irish coffee, if Matt will ever come to the Teeling distillery to have an Irish coffee. The next is pineapple rum. So pineapple rum from Plantation, what they do is they make a rum and then they separate it. They redistill with the skin. So cut the skins off the pineapple into the still, kind of like gin, in that they redistill the liquid and they make a distilled product with the skin. So it has a lovely kind of aroma of the that green kind of astringency and vibrancy of it, the skins of the pineapple. The other half of the rum, think of it like a giant teacup. They get a giant vat of pineapples, for the flesh of pineapples, and then submerge it in a big vatting of fresh fruit, and then they mix those two things together. So a pineapple flavored rum and a redistilled rum with the skins, blending those together. And then we get those casks. We're the first company to ever receive those pineapple rum casks. So really, really proud to do that, obviously working with those guys. But yeah, that's, in a nutshell, is a pineapple rum from Plantation.
I mean, I'm not really sure what I was thinking pineapple rum was going to be, but it definitely wasn't that. In my head, Alex Gabriel somehow made sugar out of pineapples. And kind of distilled that, and that's what I was thinking about. I was like, yeah, pineapples are sugary. Rum.
I'm sure that there's, I've always asked Alex, so we're making alcohol out of sugar, like potatoes and grains and things like that. Not necessarily the sweetest things in the world. Why can't we make alcohol out of fruit? And Alex Chasko, our master distiller, said, well, there's far more methanols in fruits than there is in grains and potatoes, things like that. So yeah, you'd be stripping away a lot of the inferior stuff, or largely stripping away a lot of inferior stuff, apparently. Anyway, I'm not the scientist. I just talk about whiskey and drink whiskey. But that would be cool. That would be cool if you could make an alcohol out of, or a drinkable alcohol out of pineapples.
I mean, I'm sure there's probably distilleries in the world that do it, and we just don't know about them yet. On the next episode of 3 Drams. No, I'm only joking. Well, fantastic. Why don't you give us a little, I suppose, background into this whiskey, and let's get the first sip in the mouth. I'm going to take a little sip now and listen to your Australian melody go, and
yeah, of course. So yeah, this is, again, like I said, for all intents and purposes, same whiskey. That whiskey being a blend. So it's almost like our control whiskey. As you know, Teeling do a lot of different releases. Anytime we get a new cask, we've used up to 150. We usually start with that pre-rum blend. It's 3 parts grain or corn, 1 part malt, aged separately in ex-bourbon barrels for about 4 to 6 years. And then normally in small batch goes into Central American rum, but we've done a lot of these collabs so we can learn what those casks are doing if we're using the same whiskey every time. For this one, what we're finding is, that green astringency. I mean, when people hear pineapple rum flavored whiskey or finished whiskey, they're going to assume pineapple juice. They're going to assume sweetness and flesh because that's what we eat of the pineapple. But there's a lot of that green astringency, like I call it a cousin to pot still, that green malic spice, green apple spice. But I think it's a little bit more sour. And there is that kind of sour citrus note. Like a lot of Teeling whiskey is very fresh and vibrant, fresh fruits. So there's certainly passion fruit, but I would say it's almost veering towards, there's pineapple, but I think it's veering towards passion fruit. That sweet and savory sourness coming from that spice of that astringency of the skins of the pineapple. So there's a vibrancy there. There's also that underlying vanilla, butterscotch, toffee, caramel, honeycomb of a grain whiskey that certainly kind of helps that sweetness along. And then that complexity of malt and that wood characteristic really brings it back into whiskey territory as opposed to just pineapple flavored spirit.
Well, I think people are already enjoying this in the comments section. And if you are tasting along, do let us know what you're tasting. I'm going to throw my nose in here. I do like Dermot Corey saying that the Paris suggestion, all you can smell now is pineapples.
But especially if you think of a fresh pineapple, buy a fresh pineapple from the grocery store and smell the outside and then smell this whiskey. Yeah, certainly a lot of fresh pineapple in there.
And is there a particular length of time that you're mature or you're finishing the small batch Teeling in before release?
So for this one, this is the second batch that we did. So for the first run, it was about 12 to 18 months, but we're constantly receiving casks. We don't just get 100 casks, in January and then put all the whiskey in those. It doesn't work that way. We get Jamaican casks from them and Curacao casks from them and blah, 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 blah. So they'll occasionally send us, do you want like 3 more pineapple casks? Sure, no problem. So this is the second batch that we've done. Generally, we're talking around 8 to 12 months inside the marrying cask because you're making those separate whiskeys and bring them together. But yeah, roughly about 8 to 12 months inside the rum. Then we're tasting at a cask strength. Normally, we'd bring it up or bring it down to 46 for bottling, 46% ABV. But for this one, a little bit more on the lighter side of things. So we upped it again to 49.2. Still non-chill filtered and no coloring. Yeah, so lovely, nice color to it.
So, I mean, obviously we've talked before about the kind of world of experimentation in the warehouses in Teeling, and I suppose that's one of the roles that Alex, your head distiller and master blender, plays in that determining of whether or not the spirit is light in flavor, light in color, so on that forth, and bringing that up from your bottling strength of 46 to 49.2. And I guess he makes those decisions for every batch going out. Then is that the idea?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, look back at the Brabazon series. So that one, they were perfect examples. They, I call them the traditional flavors in single malts. They were port and sherry influenced single malts exclusively, and they were obviously brought down to our signature 46% out of cask, and they lost a little bit of their punch, a little bit of that oomph. I mean, we're aiming for a flavor bomb, and it's a little subtle, and then when you add water to that, even more subtle still. So you just bring that ABV up. Yeah, it makes the product a little bit more expensive, but again, it's a trade-off. So very rarely do we go below 46, and it's not a flavor-led decision. It's more an age-led decision as those really old stuff from the family stock drops below 46, and you get to that level of, okay, do we release it soon?
Yeah, many people don't realize that if you fill a cask of whiskey today at like 63, in their 30-year time period, you're going to hit the 40 mark pretty sharply around that mark. And I know Teeling isn't shy about decent age statements these days, so I'm sure there's definitely a lot of work for Alex up in the warehouses, keeping an eye on some of those older stock casks, making sure that they don't dip too far.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I remember famously John Teeling used to carry around a little sample, and the man doesn't drink. Absolute weird that such a man doesn't drink, but he used to carry around a whiskey, and I won't name the distillery, but they've been around for many years. And he was saying it was a 70-year-old product, but it was below 40, so you couldn't even call it whiskey anymore. Like black in color, almost like real dark, just been breathing in and out of the wood. Went below 40. They're like, oh, what do we do with this? But past the point of trickery and putting in a new cask, things like that, and trying to keep the age statement, so they kind of left it behind. And it's like, well, I mean, just taste people on it, give them a sense of what a really old whiskey tastes like.
Exactly. I wasn't sure when you were saying you were going to give John a moniker there. I wasn't sure where you're going. It reminded me. I sat beside him for a different distillery opening. There, he was the keynote speaker, and the owner of that distillery announced him as the grandfather of Irish whiskey. And
I was gonna go with Godfather, but I was getting like images of Marlon Brando. I don't think I'm gonna pull out the grandfather.
Well, it was funny because he was introduced as the grandfather of Irish whiskey, and he came down after making his keynote speech at the opening of this very large other distillery that he's not a part of. He was just the guest speaker, and he spent about 5 or 6 minutes explaining to me how Godfather would have been completely fine, but he's already a grandfather to children. He doesn't need to be a grandfather to an industry. So. I was watching, wondering where that was going to go, but no, we're all safe here anyway now.
With a careful, non-committal answer.
Yeah, exactly. Very few other people will be wandering around with 70-year-old whiskey in their pocket.
Exactly.
Did you ever get to try any?
No, I think this was before my time. I've never seen. I just heard stories. I've heard tell about the legends, but yeah, no. Unfortunately, I didn't get to try that. I think Chris did. I'm fairly certain Chris did, but anyway, it could be a complete fallacy, and it's just a great story people tell.
Exactly. It's funny. I've heard about 6 different origin stories where that 70-year-old came from as well. So I think in some cases the legend is more interesting than the finished product.
Never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Absolutely. So we have Teeling's Stiggins.
Stiggins fancy, yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to trip over that. Plantation rum collaboration.
Yeah, so it came about through a literary reference. I can't remember exactly. I should know more, but basically it was a literary reference because they didn't want to be known as the Pineapple Rum guys. I didn't want it to be a fad. They pulled out these literary references. It was a collaborative process. They've done a few of those with their other products. But yeah, Stiggins Fancy is the name of their pineapple rum. And funnily enough, the collaborative process goes both ways. They did a version of their Stiggins Fancy finished in our Black Pits casks. So there's a Stiggins Smoky, which is really, really lovely. A pineapple rum aged in Dublin peated single malt casks.
That sounds fantastic. On a side note, I think I saw someone mentioning that up in the comments a few minutes ago. But that does sound absolutely spectacular. And just to before we go to clarify, for Plantation, do they age their rum in France or is it aged in the French colonies?
I think there's a bit of both. So yeah, the Jamaican rum casks that we got are from Jamaica. They've just opened the West Indies distillery, so they bought a distillery and are producing down there. So a few of their products, but I mean, again, they're producing locally there, so it's not a huge adventure. But yeah, they've got Panamanian. I think their 3-star is a combination of Panamanian and I'm not sure. I don't want to speak on a company that I work for, but yeah, they do different products from around the world. So they usually source those. They don't own distilleries in all these countries. They've purchased them in. So I would say that the rum industry is quite similar to the whiskey industry in that they probably matured on site in those countries, and then starting to move them around would probably make a little bit more sense in a larger container. But I don't know.
Maybe there was a question I should put to someone in Plantation Rum rather than Teeling Whiskey Company.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I
well,
do love it. I do like really interested by it. But yeah, no, big whiskey fan here.
I will say it was a fun anecdote. Rob, yourself and myself were at Frankfurt Whiskey Fest. That in the last year, and we went exploring through the stalls, and we found ourselves at the Plantation stand, where Rob very knowingly, well, not knowingly, but very excitedly asked for a particular rum from Plantation, to which we were informed is only sold in Grenada or
Barbados. Yeah, but it was a coconut rum. So like I said, the pineapple rum. Yeah, it's a coconut rum. I have a running kind of gag. So the European brand ambassador for Plantation is Jonathan, and because I get to travel, thankfully for my job, it's very exciting. But sometimes I'm trying these products well before people that have worked for Plantation. So I'm two up on him now. I've tasted two products from his company before he did. One was the coconut rum that's only sold in Barbados, and the yuzu curacao that they made from Pierre Ferrand.
Well, listen, an absolute tough life of outdoing other global brand ambassadors.
Say about whiskey.
Listen, it's an awful tough one. So Rob, if people are out there in the world looking for this whiskey, apart from, of course, Irish Malt, who will drop this bottle to your door, there'll be a discount code in your email box at the end of this show. Do you have an idea of the ORP and where in the world, particularly in Europe, people might find it? Perhaps in Germany, because Tina will come after me if I don't ask about Germany. It's a running theme in this show at this point.
Well, I did open up the comments there, and Tina has said she just tried the rosé. The rosé was exclusive to Germany, so adversely, the Plantation pineapple was exclusive to certain markets, and those markets tend to be where we share a distributor with Plantation. So Denmark, Greece, Netherlands, and then obviously we release some in Ireland. And definitely check out these guys. Like, I think you're putting it up on special at the end of this, if I'm not mistaken, on Irish Malt.
Again, I don't work for Irish Malts, so I'm gonna have to say yes, and then assume the guys in the background put it on special. So
definitely check out Irish Malts.
They do all the hard work. I show up once a month and I get to talk to fun people and drink nice whiskey. I have the easy end of this stick here, to be honest. But yes, if you say so, absolutely. But of course, if you are a subscriber to the wonderful world of 3 Drams, there'll be a discount code in your inbox where you can get either one or two of tonight's whiskeys shipped directly to your door with a nice discount. Perfect. Well, Rob, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I know that it is a very busy world of whiskey right now with all the airports back open again. So I appreciate you coming on to join us. And thank you so much for introducing us to a fantastically interesting and wonderful whiskey. And now I know how pineapple rum is made, because I had the complete wrong idea in my head. So I'm going to say sláinte, and thank you very much.
Cheers. Just quickly, I seen that Gavin McCusker has just put it into Charles Dickens quote from the Pickwick Papers. So there you go. Learn something new every day. Thank you, Gavin. Cheers, guys. Cheers, Matt.
There you go. I'm going to pull that up for people to have a look at right now. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to knock you off, Rob, and I'm going to say hello to our next guest. So thanks so much. All right. I am delighted to be welcoming back to the show Tomas Mac Cormaic from Éirinn Irish Whiskey. This is a whiskey. We had 2 single casks, 11-year-olds recently, maybe 2-3 months ago, from this exciting new brand, unreleased of yet. So you are getting a sneak peek into the world of upcoming Irish whiskies. A lovely, fantastic cast strength 20-year-old single malt. And I'm going to say a very big welcome to the show. How are you doing, sir?
How are things, Matt?
Listen, we are sitting here in a lovely evening. We have a fantastic new pack. I think everything's going well. The only thing that go better is I could put a little bit of this in my glass. So if you could tell everyone watching at home a little bit about, I suppose, who you are and your brand is quickly, because I know we did it before, but just for anyone watching new, and then what do we have? Because I'm going to pour a little bit of this into my glass.
Yeah, I suppose. So I represent Éirinn Irish whiskey, and kind of business model is finishing whiskey in Irish oak casks that we dry the wood here. We source the timber in Ireland. We dry the wood in Ireland, and we have the barrels then coopered, and we're finishing whiskey of kind of various age statements and different, both pot still, malt, and grain inside an Irish oak cask, and to kind of find out how to create a good whiskey.
There you go. A very interesting and fun project you've undertaken. It's definitely one of the more unique ones. We talked a lot about this before, but I suppose very quickly, what inspired you to go down that pure Irish oak direction?
Well, start there. We originally looked at setting up a distillery, and then we saw the niche in the market that nobody was at the time finishing whiskey in Irish oak. Dargaelic had yet to come out at the time, so we started to source Irish timber. There's a linty period, we say, between finding timber, seasoning it, then maturing the whiskey and bottling it. So Dargaelic got ahead of us a small bit, and we're coming out now so with our Irish whiskey. But I suppose the interest, I suppose, is there's a lot more variety of what you can do in terms of, without a distillery, in terms of making your own barrels and kind of finding the suitable timber, seasoning it in different ways and stuff like that, and then having kind of control over the kind of the whole process in terms of, cutting it at the right time of the year, selecting the staves, deciding, what how they're going to be dried, whether it's going to be outdoors totally, whether it's going to be indoors, if they're going to be what length of time they're going to be exposed to the rain, and then picking the right whiskey to go with the right barrel. So I suppose when you're doing it on a very small scale compared to, say, all the big cooperages in the world, you can actually smell the aroma and stuff like that from the whiskey, which I suppose in bigger cooperage, because it comes down to cost effectiveness, and it's a process of machinery and stuff like that. It just goes through milling system, whereas we can individually select the staves, kind of almost taste the aroma off them, kind of see what kind of tannins they have in them, what kind of coloring it has, and then we can kind of select the whiskey that will actually suit the barrel.
Fantastic. And I suppose in that case, how many, because I suppose people don't think about the process from tree to barrel stave, but how many, I suppose, barrels would you get out of a standard length of oak tree?
Yeah, if it's the right tree, you'll get about 4 barrels, maybe up to 6 barrels. But in Ireland, because kind of oak is kind of a lot rarer, and you're finding, if you say you go to somewhere like France, a lot of the trees were set, we say, after the Napoleon era for shipbuilding, and then after the ships went out of fashion and stuff like that, those trees then were used for both furniture and then for barrel making. So they were managed forests. In Ireland, we didn't really have very many managed forests. Most of them were in the States. So for a lot of the trees we pick up are individual trees, and you mightn't even get 1 barrel out of a single tree. In the right tree, you could get 2 or 3 barrels. So it's kind of, every tree is kind of different. So I suppose that's the one thing that kind of distinguishes Irish oak from kind of any of the forests across Europe and places like that, where they're getting, timber for barrels.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that people getting into the whiskey industry in general, not just in Ireland, but Irish people looking abroad, I remember talking to a lot of people who were shocked at the speed at which American oak in particular would grow. And, a tree might be ready in 40 years, say, where perhaps in school we would always be told that Irish oak trees grow up to, say, 200 years old into their full maturity. So there's obviously a very different kind of growing period at that point. I see there's a lot of people in the comments already who are raving about the nose of this. So I'm not going to delay any further. I do want to jump in because, as I mentioned before, this will be my first time trying this whiskey. So can you tell us a little bit about this whiskey, what it is and what it was before your barrel and what barrel it went into?
Yeah, so this came out of an American oak barrel. We purchased it when it was 19 years old. It remained for a year in the Irish oak barrel. It's a single malt from John Teeling. So from the Great Northern Distillery, I suppose originally Kool-Aid and stuff. So I suppose, yeah, we finished it. We managed this one more so than the other two, Bamba and Fiodla, because we did notice with this one, I think the smell was and the aroma was far more powerful about 2 weeks before we actually took it out of the barrel. So, it seems that the particular barrels did seem to have a different effect on the three different whiskies. Where there is a kind of, which you wouldn't really expect, there is a fine time to take a whiskey out of a barrel in terms of, and it does almost come down in a period of weeks rather than, years, if a lot of people believe.
I'm just going to pull up a picture of your whiskey here, just give people an indication of what we're tasting. So I just always want to make sure people know. So when they see it on the shelves after the fact, they'll know they taste it and be excited about it. So fantastic. And I mean, obviously, we're when you're talking about those kind of periods of weeks, something you have to monitor quite closely, I imagine.
Yeah.
Especially with virgin oak.
So it did kind of become a smoother whiskey to drink and stuff like that compared to the other two. The other two whiskies, Bamba and Fiodla, were far more powerful in terms of tannins and the kind of bite they had in them and stuff like this. And this is a far smoother whiskey. And when I say, you have to time manage it, I do notice is the longer you leave this whiskey sitting in the room, the more the aroma kind of interacts with the air, kind of the oxidation and stuff like that. So initially, when you pour it, you will get a kind of a stronger aroma from the other two whiskies. And this one kind of like seeps out over kind of a longer period of time. So I suppose you can appreciate it more.
Exactly. So 56.5, is that correct?
56.5, yeah.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to say a little sláinte. I'm going to have a little sip. And then why don't you talk us through a little bit of tasting here? So say sláinte.
Yeah. I suppose, initially on the nose, there's kind of summer fruits. There's kind of sweet scenting flowers, and there's kind of a hint of treacle, I suppose, and there's a bit of licorice in it. You do get a small bit of nuts and chocolate and maybe honey. I suppose, on the palate then, it doesn't have the same sort of a bite as Bamba and Fiodla. It's kind of a lot smoother. You do get some ginger spices and tannins, and there's kind of a complexion of different woods. You get kind of birch and elm and maybe a bit of, oak and stuff like that. You still get that kind of, that flaming dart sensation that's kind of biting on your taste buds. And I suppose, there is kind of a few, what we have been looking for in Irish oak is kind of to see, could we kind of bring out different, new tastes. In one of the other ones that I mentioned, we discovered that there's a kind of a taste of pig nut, which is kind of a very rare Irish nut grown under the ground, which has very sweet flavor to it. In this one, I do find a bit of, wild spinach, or I think it was anciently called fat hen. And I suppose, the finish, there is a kind of a pulsation, kind of a throbbing lush going down through you. There is kind of, I suppose some peppers, maybe a small bit of leathers. You will get, the caramels, you may get a small bit of burnt bacon. And again, you have, the forest fruits and stuff like that. And, I think it's a far kind of a smoother whiskey. You definitely know it's a kind of a superior whiskey than the other two.
Well, this is incredibly complex and in depth. I'm very much enjoying diving in. I'm sharing the glass around here.
There's a few even notes in it that, I suppose I'm the one who's doing a lot of the tasting. So I've been tasting it for the last few months. There is a few of the notes that still kind of ghost you. You can't kind of really, even looking at the charts and stuff like that, you can't kind of, single out one of them, but there's some extra things in there, and there is very, very complex. I suppose that's one of the good things about Irish oak is they are very complex. You do have that tighter grain. You do have a kind of a slower release of the chemicals. And, that's kind of one of the decisions kind of when you're maturing whiskey is, if you look, we say the bourbons and stuff like that, where they put them into new barrels, they kind of are, they're kind of sweeter and there's more caramels and stuff on it like that. But, in Ireland, we kind of almost reverse that. we're kind of doing, filling whiskey in second and third fill barrels, and then we're kind of finishing in new barrels. So the new barrels, you take out an awful lot of the impurities over the longer term maturations, and then you can kind of get all the, the rich bitiness, and you can kind of, get that complex kind of gelling of those flavors in the kind of new barrel when you're finishing.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, it kind of, people use virgin oak and often call comparisons to the likes of bourbon in that sense as a bookmark for people to help understand virgin oak a lot better. But never really is there kind of a taste collaboration between the worlds of Irish and bourbon too much. But this, to me, tastes both in the worlds of incredibly well-aged and well-matured bourbon, and the same in Irish, very beautifully blended. Like, this is the first time that I'm having a very interesting sensation of those kind of like the nutmegs and ginger spices and that little, wood pop from the virgin oak, into reminiscent of maybe even a kind of a rye crackle, reminiscent of that.
Yeah, one thing about this wood as well, I suppose, it's the only timber that's ever been air dried in Ireland. So, you go to the continent where a lot of the big cooperages are in France and Spain and Portugal, where they have the warm weather, and that warm weather kind of reacts with the timber differently compared to the weather we have in Ireland, which is a lot of it is kind of damp and stuff like that, especially for longer periods in a month. There's more rains and stuff like that. And that does have a kind of a chemical reaction to the timber, especially in the drying period. As I mentioned in the last time I was on with you, we know, like, we sweated the timber. Basically, we didn't have them, parted like, what they have in other countries where they put kind of timbers between the staves when they're drying. For some of it, we actually had the timber lying on top of each other. So we were able to actually sweat it out, and it was actually able to absorb it back in again. And we actually had the timber drying with other timbers, as I said, like walnut and beech and ash and stuff like that. So it would have possibly soaked in some of those tannins. So, it's not even about soaking in those tannins. It's about the chemical reaction on the surface, and then what will that happen inside in the actual the timber itself, So you are talking about maybe 200 different chemicals in Irish oak. So it does kind of come out in the complexity of, the maturation.
Absolutely fantastic. And I see a lot of people are asking if there's any updated release dates of when and where people are going to be able to get this. So you've got some excited people in front of you here.
They will be out before Christmas. So I suppose what we mentioned the last time is we're making the boxes ourselves, and it comes down to air drying the oak, sort of stability of the timber. We could go in and get them kiln dried, but I think it's kind of more natural to dry them. And then, to make the boxes and put in to finish them right. Like, so, some of them have been made, some of them are ready for release, but we were probably making more boxes to release it properly.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Obviously, it'll be available on Irish Malts.
Yeah, exclusively through Irish Malts. Yeah.
Fantastic. What we love hearing, exclusively through Irish Malts.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they'll be available wherever Irish Malts do ship to. There's lots of places in the world they ship to. There's a few places that they don't ship to. Looking at you, few places with funny alcohol laws. I'm seeing a lot of people like John jumping in here saying it's incredible. It gets more interesting with every sip. And this is his favorite so far of all the three Éirinn whiskies. And great to see that he's been able to join us for both of the tastings here as well.
You will find this is a far more luxurious whiskies. It's hard to compare it to other whiskies. But when you do compare it, like for a lot of the lighter notes, there's just no comparison. I mean, there's this, the complexity of this, the aroma of this,
Absolutely fantastic. I am looking forward to it. I presume Irish Malt will make a very big song and dance about it when you do release ahead of Christmas. So we are excited to see that. I am incredibly interested to see these hand dried and made new cases for this whiskey as well. I'm sure down the line we're going to see some incredibly well presented whiskeys to go along with the fantastic taste as well. Certainly a whiskey journey that nobody else is really undertaking. So certainly one I'm going to be very excited to see hit the market. I'm going to pull the image back up again just so people know what they're looking at and know what they'll be looking for on the shelves. I presume this is as it will be presented, the bottle itself. Tomas, is that correct?
Yeah, so there's a timber box goes around that.
Yes.
Bottle, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time. I
much.
very much appreciate it. I know that we've had a fantastic time speaking to you twice now for 3 very exclusive looks at your new portfolio coming out. I know that people you can see it very clearly in the comment section. People very excited for your whiskey. So I very much appreciate your time, and I am very much excited to see this on the shelves and in the shopping cart of Irish malts when it is released.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Oh, very much appreciated.
Yeah.
So I am delighted to be welcoming our final guest of the evening. Now it does say Lauren here, but I am even more excited to be able to welcome Master Blender Alex Thomas to the show. Welcome. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Delighted to be joining you.
It is absolutely wonderful to have you here. I believe the first time on the show. I am incredibly excited to be talking about a whiskey that I have never leaves my shelf of whiskeys. My one of my absolute go-tos, the Sexton Irish whiskey. For the people at home, the charlatans that don't know who you and the Sexton are, can you give us a brief introduction while I pour my final sample of the evening into this glass?
Yeah, well, see, I'm Alex Thomas, the master blender of the Sexton Irish single malt. The Sexton's 100% Irish single malt, triple distilled in copper pot stills and aged exclusively in Oloroso sherry casks. So it's a nod to tradition in how I distill, but I embrace innovation and how I mature. I wanted to create a whiskey that was for whiskey lovers as well as those who thought it wasn't for them. And I'm delighted that in 2017 in November I was able to do that, and I launched the Sexton to America, and in less than a year it became the #1 Irish single malt in America, a title it still holds today, and it's now available in Ireland and all over the world. So it's delightful to be out there and people enjoying it.
So repeat that title you're holding in the US for me, just in case people didn't hear
it.
We
are the #1 Irish single malt in America. That never tires of saying that.
Fantastic. Well, that is certainly an accolade to celebrate. My glass is now full. I'm very excited. I'm seeing people in the comments section who apparently love hearing from both yourself and Lauren, and I'm delighted to be able to pull a little switcheroo for people going one way, and here we are again with another. So I suppose I'm going to take a little sip, and can you give me a little background and just, I suppose, where this went from brainchild to bottle, our product in bottle? Because obviously a very unique bottle, a very unique kind of stylized icons on the bottle as well, and kind of brand identity around it.
For me, the Sexton's my life story and whiskey in a bottle. Single malt for me is where I've trained. I've started my career in 2004 in the single malt category, so it was always going to be that. I wanted to bring in people that inspired me. So European oak was in relation to Watson a Cooper at the distillery, who taught me everything I needed to know about wood. And he was just so excited about European oak and how it was much more romantic. The story he was telling you, how it was setting fire, toasted on the inside rather than setting fire like the American oak, and it was much more gentle in the whiskey. So the European oak was in homage to all of that time he spent with me. Sherry is just such a wonderful product for me, and it's just that sweetness that's in there that just for me balances a really good single malt well. So I wanted to use only the Oloroso sherry rather than bringing in the bourbon or any other cask profile, because they are just such special casks. The flavor profile just comes in, the dried fruits, the figs, the sweetness is there and balances really well with the distillate that I make. Of course, I needed a wonderful name for this whiskey. So the Sexton comes from medieval Latin, and it means the custodian of precious objects, or more simply put, it's the caretaker of precious things. And as a master blender, I'm the caretaker of this amazing whiskey while it's in its cask. And this evening, you have become its caretaker while it's in your glass. It's also the name given to this little guy here, the Sexton. So if you've met him, this is the gravedigger, the guy that lays the body to rest. So if you've met him, it's a sad day normally. But growing up, Irish whiskey for me was more about celebrating life. It came out on those special occasions where one of us at home had passed an exam or we got married. But more often than not, it was my grandfather or my father bringing out that special bottle to celebrate the member of our family that had passed away. But I remember the house full of stories and the love that we had for those ones that had left. So it wasn't sad. It was about the memories that we have, and we look after each other, and sharing over a wonderful whiskey gives you those memories that you can keep for many, many years after those loved ones have left. So that whole inspiration about how I had spent all of that time in my life learning how to make this beautiful whiskey, and the heritage that it's had from the past with my memories from a child. And obviously, where else was I going to design it around? The Giant's Causeway Stone, such an inspiration for the Irish category. The love that we have for Finn McCool and Ben O'Donnell and the fight that they had over Ireland is represented by our beautiful Giant's Causeway Stone. So you can see the shape of the bottle is represented there. Purposely black, because the best day as a master blender is the day you release the spirit from the cask for the very first time. That beautiful aroma comes round, the color you get to see, and it's just such an exciting time. So by hiding it away in the bottle, you get to be a little bit of a master blender every time you pour a drop out.
Absolutely fantastic. And I suppose on the terms of the market out there at the moment, there's very few, if not any, Irish single malts that are exclusively aged in Oloroso for their life cycle. So obviously a very unique product, and I can see why people are gravitating towards the profile. I'm presuming is the likes of Antonio Paez or someone you work with in Jerez that are producing these casks for you. Are they hogsheads? Are they butts? Or how are they looking in the warehouse?
Yeah, so the Antonio Paez Lobato family, I have been privileged to work with them for many years, and a bit like my own craft has been from the next generation. The two sons are now taking over the business from their father, and I worked with both of them on the construction of the cask, sourcing the oak in France, shipping it to Spain and air drying it for 16 months, and then seasoning for 2 years with the most amazing Oloroso sherry, and from then bringing them over to Ireland where I can fill them with aquavitae. Normally, the casks are very expensive, so obviously putting them into only Oloroso sherry cask was a very risky thing for me to make sure I could get a product that was coming out that was an approachable price point. I want people to enjoy this wonderful whiskey no matter what the occasion. So I don't want to have it in a cupboard being stored away because it's a really expensive bottle. This is a really high quality product that people can afford. So right from the barley that I use and where I distill that represents the island of Ireland to just showcase what Ireland do well. It's those wonderful whiskies. So working with these casks are just amazing. And they are butt casks, which are 0.5 ton when full, but I can move them. Whiskey's like your life. Give it a little nudge in the right direction and it will carry you through. And the casks are the same. Just give them a little nudge and they will roll and do the work for you.
There's some statement to put on the old CV, all right. The ability to move half a ton of whiskey at any one time.
There's no better day when, no offense, you gentlemen come to work at the distillery for the first time and you're pushing and pushing and pushing at these casks and can't get them to move. And the guys will call me down and I show them how it's done, and they're very well pushing them very quickly after that themselves.
Well, it's nice to see. It's always a school day, or as they say. Exactly, always something to learn. And as you said, the very iconic black bottle in its hexagonal shape. Great to see the success of that as well. The consumers around the world can be very suspicious and fickle of black bottles, and I get none of that with Sexton because it fits the brand so well. And obviously, that brand identity works brilliantly. I'm sure the guys down at the bottling hall are delighted that it's a 6-sided bottle. I'm sure that didn't cause any issues. But obviously very iconic, very easy to spot on a back bar, very easy to spot in the shop shelves. I presume you've seen it around either the US or around the world on the back bars. I'm sure that's quite an interesting or quite an exciting feeling for you, I'm sure.
Very much so. To see it even in the airport as I'm traveling out to go to different places, and then seeing it in the bar and hearing people say such wonderful things about it really is a delight. Obviously with a name like Alex Thomas, they're never expecting me. So to turn up at a whiskey festival and do tastings with the Sexton and hear people say how wonderful it is and how they like to drink it, whether it's neat with a little ice, little water, put a bit of ginger ale in it or in cocktails, it really has been embraced for exactly what I designed it for, to drink your way. There's no right or wrong way to drink a single malt, and this is what the Sexton's about. It's drink it your way, make your memories, whatever way that's with you. Each occasion you're at, whether it is sitting by the fire with the feet up and a little bit of a neat whiskey there, or out with your friends and celebrating with a cocktail, the Sexton will shine through in every drop you have.
Absolutely fantastic. And I'm seeing a lot of people singing your praises and the Sexton's praises in the comment sections here. Are, you know, obviously such a big success. Are we going to see perhaps any line extensions? Or I know there's a few people will bite my hand off to ask if they'll maybe seeing a cast strength edition in the future, in a few years' time, or is the Sexton pure, you nailed it on the first try?
Well, watch this space is all I can say to that. As a blender, you're always looking for something new and innovating. So I'm always working away in the warehouses with something. So at the moment, I'm just so delighted to see people embrace the Sexton and the version that we have, and enjoying it. So at the moment, I'm very happy to have that out. But yeah, watch this space.
And I suppose for any of the fans of The Walking Dead as well, I know that the Sexton has a very on point and on brand collaboration with AMC's The Walking Dead, a global phenomenon TV show. And I think it was launched, that collaboration whiskey was launched in Atlanta, which is where the show is set. So there's clearly someone on the brand team is doing a fantastic job there, even in the small details. So I'm sure that was also exciting to see the two global brands kind of coming together like that. Must have been a very interesting collaboration.
Yeah, without a doubt. Like, I am a huge fan of The Walking Dead, and to be part of their final series was a real honor. We had Ross Marquand. Éirinn is one of our ambassadors, and he came to the distillery to meet me, and he absolutely loves the whiskey as well. And he's been doing an absolutely fantastic job out there promoting it for us, and working alongside The Walking Dead just works so well for us, because both the show and the whiskey are about what comes after and keeping living life. There's always a sad day in your life, but life does go on, and it's what you do to make the most of that. And time is precious with your family and your friends, and it's about making the most of it. And the show showed us that, as well as the whiskey is there to promote that and get you to enjoy it.
Yeah, I dare say that obviously a very nice message to kind of pick up on, and of course in the US and around Europe, the concept of an Irish funeral being a celebration of life than a sadness of passing is quite famous. And I know people used to ask me about it all the time when I lived in the US. Fascinated by the concept of turning the idea of a funeral from sad to happy is quite well recognized, and obviously a very interesting theme to play on. And I think that's kind of, anyone listening to me rabble on now, is I'm a fan of this brand story, brand positioning, brand packaging. Goes beautifully with the liquid and goes all very well together. I suppose for anyone who still has a drop left in their glass, because I see a lot of people diving in, can you give us a wee just introduction into, I suppose, the nose and the palate, just what we might be able to expect?
Yeah, well, the first thing you'll notice is that rich dark color coming in from those amazing Oloroso sherry casks. It's just really deep and rich on the nose. Give a good deep breath in there. Oh, that beautiful honeyed malt is going to come in there. You'll get the hints of dark chocolate, and then they'll be followed by those gentle hints of marzipan. But it's when you taste the Sexton, it really comes alive. The complexity and the fruit flavors is in there. So give it a little sip. Hold it on your tongue and then let it pass through all of your mouth. You'll get all of those different flavors, the sweetness and the bitterness, all of those flavors will coming in through. So the sweetness coming in from your figs, your raisins, you'll get the hints of marzipan in there, the allspice, little hints of clove. The finish will be just that gentle wood, the sweet honey just lingering long enough for you to want a second sip. It really is a delightful whiskey. The smoothness from the triple distillation in the palate is just such a delight. It is a youthful whiskey. It's a young whiskey compared to many of the ones that I would have worked with when I was training. Normally, we keep our single malts to their 10, 12, 16 years old. But these casks in this distillate was just ready in around the 4 to 5 years. Each cask is as unique as you and I, so it does need to be given that time. So I will never release a cask until the flavour profile is right. So that's why the age profile can be up even to 5.5, 6 years. It's when the casks are right. Each tree is as unique as that, you and I, and depending on where it's at in the forest and the weathering that gets, some will get more sun, some will get more rain. Those flavours do make a difference in the cask profiles. So we do have to make sure that we give it that time. But there definitely is no better day when you're down in and you know you've got it right. it took me time to get that perfect recipe that's in the bottle now. And there was many days I went home heartbroken that I thought I'd got there and I hadn't. But the day I did, I don't think I've stopped smiling since.
Absolutely fantastic. Obviously, a great adage for blending in itself, but of course, it's great to hear so much work went into perfecting the Sexton, and what and again, the comments are lighting up of how people are enjoying the Sexton. So, Alex, Thomas, thank you so much for joining us. For everyone who is subscribed to 3 Drams, there will be a discount code for the Sexton sent to your inbox in about 1 minute from the guys in Irish Malt. It'll be a bottle dropped directly to your door should you decide to purchase it. You can also package it with the Teeling whiskey we're trying this evening for more discounts there again. Of course, check out Irish Malts for those discounts. And Alex, if we're looking for the Sexton online or yourself online, is there anywhere we should be checking out?
The Sexton has its website, yeah, so we can get there. Myself, I'm Bushmills Sexton Alex on Instagram, but Irish Malts are such a great supporter of us. Go on there, buy your bottle, taste it, share it with your friends. The Sexton challenges you that before you meet the man that makes your bit of coffin for you, to live life well, celebrate every moment and enjoy it over a great whiskey. Sláinte.
Sláinte. Thanks so much, guys, and very big thank you to everyone watching and to the team at Irish Malts. Thank you once again, and good night.